Welcome to Talkin SEC. Writer, photographer, and producer Phillip Jordan discusses the latest news and breaks down the biggest games with the best analysts around. Now, from Southeast Alabama, a state that knows its sports, here is Phillip Jordan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Talking SEC. I'm your host, Phillip Jordan from Last One College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Wolves Football. Welcome into today's show. First off, for let you guys know what's going down on today's podcast, I want to apologize for there not being a Monday edition of Talking SEC. It was recorded Sunday night. Wasn't feeling well. Really severe headache, so I didn't record it, but we're kind of merging things today here on the show. But anyways, on today's episode of Talking SEC, I'll be joined by Coach Max Howell, who is now going to be appearing here on the show every Tuesday through the rest of the college football season. We will look back at the Alabama-Tennessee matchup, the epic matchup that was Alabama-Tennessee. We'll also talk about Mississippi State, Kentucky, Auburn, Ole Miss, and much more in the SEC in Week 7. You can check out Talking SEC on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. It means a lot to the show if you do that. If you leave a review, I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also watch the show over on YouTube, either at the Phillip Jordan YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on a video. I'll read that on a future edition of the show. Also over on the Talking SEC YouTube channel as well. You can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com or hit me up on social media at pjordansec. Everybody joining me today on the show is, and then I'll say this now, will be joining me every Tuesday here on the podcast throughout the rest of the college football season. And that is Coach Max Howell, Troy Sports Hall of Famer, former Ole Miss and Florida State assistant coach, and 25 plus years in sports talk radio. And Coach Howell, it's always a pleasure when I get to talk college football with you.
Phil, thank you so much. We talked down all during the summer. We couldn't wait till football season started. And look, here it is halfway through the season.
I know.
Time flies when we're having fun, And I keep thanking enough for asking me to be in, particularly on a weekly basis now. Certainly hope I can make a contribution to your show. But I'm going to tell you just like it is. You're not going to find me leaning one way or the other. Now, the fan base that listens, they may have a different opinion. But if you did it as long as I did, and I'm fortunate enough to be around some of the best that's ever played at those positions, and we'll talk about the defensive backs at Alabama if you want to. But I try just to observe. When I watch a ball game at my house, I got two big TVs in my den. I never have anybody over. I do it by myself. But I find myself sitting on the front of a chair coaching sometimes. And if they had a camera, somebody trying to record me, they'd probably try to commit me because they couldn't believe an old man like me would still get so excited about, a defensive back get caught holding when he throws his arm over his shoulder or something like that. So anyway, we'll take it from there. I'll just wait for your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I joke with you, off air, what are we going to talk about? But obviously the Tennessee-Alabama game was something else. And I expected a really good game coming in. I mean, I did not expect 52-49 and just the up and down nature of this one. But I tell you what, just going into the game Saturday, and then before we even get into what happened between 2:30 and 7 o'clock, it was just so nice for this game to matter again. I mean, just you have game day there, SEC nation. I mean, pretty much any big pregame show, anybody big in the media, they were there in Knoxville on Saturday. And just for somebody obviously that's followed this league for a long time and covered it, 25 plus years in radio talking about this every single day. Just for you, just how big and important was it just for the conference to have Alabama and Tennessee matter on the national level once again?
Well, the third Saturday in October, was for years. Mm-hmm. That was a premier game, showed on national TV every year. But then it got to be so one-sided. Alabama went 15 in a row, and Tennessee had gone through ups and downs for so many years. And I'll be honest with you, I knew they were going to be competitive and all. But I after that game was over, that game plan that Coach Heupel and his staff put together was magnificent. I mean, they isolated completely Will Anderson. I don't think Will Anderson crossed the line of scrimmage. They double-teamed him, and he didn't know where the double team was coming from. That was one. And then on the offensive side, they spread them out so wide that, man coverage certainly didn't work because the 4-3 wide receivers could outrun the 4-5 defensive backs, and that's exactly what they did. But the other side is the number of penalties that Alabama got certainly didn't help. And, we talk about all we want to about the officiating, but it went in the record book as 17 penalties against Alabama. And they couldn't have missed them all. So that just tells you that, Tennessee was prepared. Alabama hung in there because they had a lot of talent. But when the game was over, what did they do? They missed a field goal. And I question kind of the guy that missed the field goal has missed the ones he's missed, 3, I guess, in the last couple of games, always have been from the right hash. Why in the world did somebody in the box pick that up and then run the ball to the other side and put him in the middle of the left hash, where he's always been consistent? Little things like that surface when I watch a football game that I can see one side winning and losing pretty easy.
Yeah, and looking at that game too, and I know if you get anywhere on social media, you had Alabama fans, hands raised and fussing and everything else about the penalties. But I'm like, the same thing happened against Texas. You have 15 penalties in that one, and let's just be honest. If Quinn Ewers doesn't go down in that one, you may be in the same situation you were here, because that first quarter he was lighting Alabama's secondary up, and it seems like lately, the last 2 seasons, when Alabama goes on the road, when they get away from Tuscaloosa, they're not the same team defensively in their discipline. I mean, last year, how many times I feel like when they go on the road now, these big games like this, like against Tennessee and it was Texas and the Auburn game last year, and so many more these last 2 years, Bryce Young has to put the Superman cape on. I mean, if he does not play out of this world, they don't have a shot now. And he did Saturday. He played a tremendous game. But it seems like there's just some issues at Alabama right now with this team from a discipline standpoint, with the penalties and just the secondary not being good, that we haven't seen before. And I'm not going to jump in here and say that Nick Saban's slipping or anything. I'm not saying he's the greatest coach of all time, but it just seems like there's some things that are just not the same in Alabama in some of these big games.
All right, now see if you agree with this. This is I have a take on that. The reason I think that Alabama it transposes over to the football team, even during practice. That the coaches stay on them hard not to make mistakes, and we know about the discipline. We've heard all those things. My opinion is some of those mistakes, if those kids get beat, let's say a lineman, there's a stunt up front and they miss the tackle and he breaks through, and what do? The first thing you have is reach out there and grab him. It's a defensive back. And the guy runs by him and the ball's coming to him. What is he going to do? He's going to grab him, tackle him. They'd rather take a 15-yard penalty than go for a touch, lose the points on the board. I think that's probably a decision-making process from the kids, from the pressure situation that's put on them. They'd literally rather take a penalty by reaching and grabbing somebody than to have let somebody score on them for whatever reason. Now, I don't know how close that is tonight. Coach Saban knows the kind of kids he has to recruit that can take that kind of discipline. But you're absolutely right. Over a period of 2 years now, in particular the secondary, I think more so there. Maybe the offensive front could be said as well as far as the consistency is concerned. But there's a difference in them now. We'll stop right there based on what we've seen this year. So from here on, Alabama still holds. They got more talent than anybody else they're going to play the rest of the year. And I think they thought that against Tennessee as well, but that proved that wasn't necessarily the truth. But I think for sure they got more talent in Mississippi State, they got more talent in LSU, they got more talent in Ole Miss, and they got more talent in Auburn. That's the big games I know that they got. So, I'll be interested to see how they handle them and how they show up now to play each one. They got to go to Oxford. Ole Miss is going to be undefeated too. And, so we'll see how. I'll say Alabama will win that one probably by 2 or 3 touchdowns, mainly because Alabama can win it in the third and fourth quarter when Ole Miss doesn't have the depth that Alabama does.
And then on the Tennessee side, let's not forget them. I mean, the team that won the game, I mean, so big for them. I mean, after 15 years, I think I've seen plenty of goalposts come down. I've never seen them leave the stadium, and I've never seen them go to the Tennessee River. But, that was a new thing. That was the excitement level going on. And also, I was really, really worried about what was going to happen in Knoxville on Saturday night when Tennessee won that one. But Hendon Hooker, I mean, and obviously, if he wasn't before, he's got to be on everybody's Heisman ballot with what he did. And the thing that's impressive, he's doing this without his best receiver. Cedric Tillman is not there. I mean, now Jalen Hyatt, if I can talk this evening, everything he caught was a touchdown. 6 touchdowns over 200 yards, 6 catches, 5 touchdowns over 200 yards receiving. But just back on Hendon Hooker, I mean, a guy at Virginia Tech was, not a guy they wanted to play. Virginia Tech's not been good lately. It's just, what's been, your analysis, your thoughts on just watching the development of Hendon Hooker under Josh Heupel?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that, he's elevated himself. I think that now he's a little older. I think I read somewhere he's like 23 or 24 years old for whatever reason. That may be, if that be the case, then I would probably say the maturity level, first of all. Not so much physically, but mentally. He can take the frustration. If he throws an interception, or if he throws an incomplete, or he fumbles the ball, he can take that in stride and come right back. Well, a lot of times young kids can't do that. And I think that, but you're absolutely right. But let me go a step further with that. The game planning that the coaching staff does to put them in those situations is what's just remarkable to me. I get way deeper into it than just watching as the play unfolds, because though he probably has the ability to check it at the line of scrimmage, every snap on every team now comes from the sideline first. Now, you can either run that if an experienced quarterback like Hooker, or he can check it, just like Bryce Young can. But the first phase of that starts by what they see in the box or what the defense is giving them. Again, if they change it, then he has an opportunity to check it off. But that just didn't happen on Saturday. That started last Monday, getting ready for Saturday. So you've got to go and look at preparation for that, look how the kids handle that, and then, of course, you transpose it into game time. And I think I can't say enough about Josh Heupel and his staff and what they've been able to do. They finally got that stadium full again. That 8 or 10 years, they went 2/3 full, and that stadium used to seat 110,000. I think it's down to 102. They just repainted the seats is all they did. But they can fluctuate that. But when you get 100,000 people in that stadium, I don't know where you've ever been in it or been on. I've been on the sidelines and I've been in the stands. It's something to behold, Phillip. It really is.
In this game, and I really think this was a sign that said, okay, Tennessee's different now than what they have been in the past, because they've had years where they've been better, but then the consistency wasn't there with some other coaches. But in the game, when Dallas Turner had that scoop and score, when it was tied 42-42 on the miscommunication on the handoff, when that happened, that would have been a moment in the past I think Tennessee may have folded or fell apart. They didn't there. They got down and then they just fought back. That was a key moment to me, and it really showed where Josh Heupel's got this program, and then the confidence level. Hey, we had something bad happen, we can fight back. I mean, that moment. What was your big takeaway from how Tennessee responded?
Well, I agree with you. I think that's the maturity level that he's brought to them, and I think it all starts with those older players. They got quite a few transfers that came into that program. If you look around, when that first started with all the schools, with the portal, I kind of questioned a little bit about, taking a large number, but the same thing is happening at Ole Miss. On the maturity level, Ole Miss took 28 transfers this year. I think Tennessee ended up with 6 or 8 that really made a difference. And I think that's where we see a program like Tennessee evolve quickly because they've gone out and found pieces that they needed in their offense and defense, and they can kind of handpick. I think next thing we're going to see that's going to be Florida. Florida's going to be able to do the same thing. They're going to take a few high school kids from that state, which is plenty up there, but they're going to take some mature kids too. And it is all about maturity. It's how you handle a busted play or, whatever it might be, a drop punt or an interception or anything like that a lot of teams will kind of, shake their head, jog over the sideline, let the other side of the ball take it over. But Tennessee is unique, and I give a lot of that to the coaching staff.
So moving forward for them, of course, they win this. It's probably a good thing they've got UT Martin this Saturday. Just kind of, just the whole thing, trying to come back from this one. Playing, if you're playing a good SEC team, you might have some struggle. Just we've seen this in college football when you get a big win like this, a program. I wouldn't know changing, but a big momentum game like this for your program. But they do have Kentucky coming up, and look. Will Levis, if he's healthy, we've seen, you can put yardage on this Tennessee team. And then, of course, there's the Georgia game on November 5th. I think everybody's already talking about that game. Sure. And I ask you this question with Tennessee, do you see this team right now this season being a national title contender after beating Alabama?
I will say this. If they play like they did against Alabama, they'll beat Georgia. And that's going to throw them in the playoffs for the SEC, in the championship game for the playoff. And if they are undefeated and have only one loss, they're going to be the top 4. I do believe that. And in all essence, I believe they deserve. Here's the key to it. We don't count this week. But if they got to get by Kentucky, they got to get by Georgia. If they can play at that level in the next 2 games that they played that we saw, and the way their offense is structured, I think they can do that because they don't ask those kids to line up and knock people off the ball every snap. They're going to throw the ball down the field and keep them loose. They're going to be able to, do some things. They're going to do the wide sweep. They're going to spread them out offensively, spread the defense out, and I think they have a better chance than if they were what I call a more traditional offense. That offense is pretty complicated for the average fan to even comprehend. If you remember, they put them out from outside the hash marks on both sides. If the ball's in the middle of the field, they were within 2 yards of the boundary on each side. And that opens up, in particular, like Alabama, I keep reverting back to that, Coach Saban is a man-to-man coverage defense. He don't like zone coverage. You're going to get mismatches with that offense versus your defense if you play in man coverage. We saw that all night against Alabama. If they'd have swap that up so that you some zone coverage in between, it probably would have contained it a little bit more. But if you remember in the game, the Danielson and them drew the circles, how big of openings there were in the middle of the field. In Tennessee, that's all by design. That's Heupel's offense, and they perfected it, and Hooker executes it as good as anybody in the country.
Yeah, it's just, obviously I'm already thinking about the Georgia game. It's just kind of in my head like, okay, Georgia's got a better defense than Alabama. We know that, and it'll be in Athens. But if they're able to move the ball, and I don't think 52 points on Georgia, but still, if it's in the 30s, then you got a question. And I know I don't like to be one of these that does it, but you got to wonder, can Stetson Bennett go toe-to-toe with Hendon Hooker if it does become that kind of game? And I don't think he can.
See, I don't either. I agree with you. And I think that's the comparison you have to make. I really do. But and I'll tell you something else now. Even if we go back to somewhere of the officiating, another thing that they did do very successfully, that basically they got to Bryce Young. I mean that number 21 hit. They didn't call it targeting, but I thought it was like 1001, 1002. The ball was already gone, and that guy came across the pile and put that head shoulder right on him. I thought that call probably should have been at least a roughing the passer call, maybe not a targeting call, because that was hit. And I saw him get hit 2 or 3 more times like that, but he shook it off. You'd never known he was hurt the week before and couldn't play. But my point is that wherever they go, I would be surprised if they don't try to do the same game plan against Georgia's offense that they did against Alabama's offense. And if they do, I don't see how they can put up 50 points. I really don't.
Yeah, I just don't either. And that's not really a slide at Stetson Bennett. It's just that offense. I don't think Georgia's not built offensively to do that. It's just how
true.
They are.
Very true.
So looking at just to kind of rest SC, the other matchup between top 25 teams was the Kentucky-Mississippi State game. I know Mississippi State came in with a lot of confidence. They only had one loss, the LSU game. Kind of same situation if Will Rogers does not have a really great performance, Mississippi State loses. But, I like their defense too. But Kentucky, got some things straightened out. Will Levis got hurt coming in. It's obvious they have to have him out there because that offense is just not as good because you can just concentrate on Rodriguez. And I'll say this about Kentucky. I don't feel like their offense line is as good as they've been in the past. So they need Rodriguez. They need Will Levis. Did you have any big takeaways out of that game? Of course, Kentucky wins 27-17.
Well, I picked at our picking show Thursday. I picked Kentucky to win that ball game because I knew Levitt was going to play. They had a running game to go. You go back and look when Mississippi State loses. They were, by the way, a 4-point favorite in that ball game. But when they lose, Alabama showed people last year how to make them lose. Will Rogers if he's got time to throw the ball, he'll pick you to pieces. If you run a traditional rush 3, drop 8 on him, drop 4 linebackers, his offense is geared to throw to a spot. The wide receivers run to that spot. That's the first thing. Second is if you put pressure on him and he's got to make a quick decision, he doesn't do very well. Or if he's got to get out of the pocket. Alabama got 7 sacks on him last year, and that destroyed his confidence. And now, if you look at what Kentucky did the other night, how many times they blitzed him, what they did on offense with Levitt, and turned it, hit it to the big running back, that's the key to being able to beat them. Just keep the score down. Don't let them don't get in a scoring battle like we saw with Alabama Tennessee. Because Mississippi State's going to probably win that one. But if you keep that score down, under 30 points, you got a great chance to beat them. So you look at who all they've got to play from here on. If they could get 7 wins for the year, even where they've got 2 losses now, I think they're going to have probably 3 or 4 more losses before the year's over.
And of course, the game just kicked off today, Ole Miss and Auburn. That was an up and down game, to say the least. I know Ole Miss jumps up 21-0, and I'm sitting there watching it. I'm like, okay, this thing's over with. Auburn's just, okay, when are we going to get the news that Brian Harson's been fired? Will they fire him and not let him come back to Auburn? But then Auburn, and it was interesting with that one because they benched Robbie Ashford. He had a couple mistakes in there, which – he's still going through. I mean, he's a freshman. I mean, he's inexperienced. He's still making those mistakes. You bring T.J. Finley in for like 1 possession. He fumbles the ball, and you bring Robbie Ashford back in. And then the Auburn offense just woke back up, and Tank Bigsby probably had his best game of the year, but they just couldn't stop the Ole Miss run game. I mean, they had, 448 rushing yards against Auburn on Saturday. But when you look at Ole Miss, and this is now the next team, of course, we talked about earlier, Alabama's got to go to Oxford, I think, November 12th. So with this Ole Miss team, I know you said you think Alabama could beat them by 2 or 3 touchdowns. How good do you think Ole Miss is right now? Because you look at their schedule, they haven't really played a really great team other than Kentucky. That was the best team they played so far. But from what you've seen, how good do you think Ole Miss is as a football team?
I said at the beginning of the year they can't get 10 wins. I think they could get 8 or 9. I really do. And I think it's mainly because he being Lane Kiffin, does have a more balanced offense than he had last year. With Corral. Corral made his living running the ball himself or throwing. They didn't have much of but they got a good tandem in the backfield now. So I think their balance is going to be a lot better. And I don't think they can beat Alabama. Of course, their big game they shoot for now, they've already conceded they'll lose to Alabama, but they're looking to go to Starkville and win that against Mississippi State, which will give them, I think, they're thinking 9 right now, probably. So how good are they? They had 28 people, kids, either juniors or seniors, that used eligibility that exited their program last year. They brought in 27 transfers. Basically, 8 starters on the defensive side, what he was not even on campus in August. But they've all meshed together. They've got a great attitude. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a week by week. Kiffin's doing a good job getting them ready. I think he's a good offensive mind. I think he can change his offense on the fly, which a lot of coaches can't do that. And his kids are like it enough. They like the looseness of that for expectations a lot in Oxford, Mississippi. They really do. They don't expect to win 11 games every year. They are happy. Everybody's happy if they win 8 or 9. So I think that plays a part in it. The expectation, as I said, is not as high, and the kids can play loose. So I say that to you. I still say I think they get 8 or 9 wins. I'd be, stepping way out of bounds for me to say who they're going to lose to. But they're going to take them 1 week at a time. And I think they got a really good chance to end up with a pretty good year this year.
Then I'll close it up just the other half of that game. Auburn, they are now 3-4. I mean, everybody knows this thing with Brian Harsin is going to come to an end at some point. Now some people thought maybe after Ole Miss, you're going to the bye week, may be a good time to fire them. Looks like right now they probably just may wait till at the end of the year before they do that, or just later in the season when you do pull that, when you pull the cord on it and it's just over. I don't think he's a bad coach. I think this was just a bad fit all over together. Yeah. What's been your take on just everything that's been going around that program this season?
Well, I think it all started with the bad fit. You hit it right on the head. And of course, Green, the athletic director, was from Buffalo, New York. He was the one that instigated the hiring, going outside the league and trying to bring in what they declared at Auburn, a change in the culture and trying to catch up with today's modern football. I heard all the reasons why. But regardless, it hasn't worked, period. Of course, Green is gold. I mean, they did not renew his contract. He's already moved from campus. They don't have an athletic director now in place. So, the word I heard, too, that they may wait till they hire an athletic director, let him hire the guy that he wants. But I told you before we went on the air today, there's 2 things. One, they better find a head coach, a guy with head coaching experience in this part of the country, and they're going to have to pay him. And they're going to have to be in that $100 million contract opportunity for them. They aren't going to get somebody for $4 or $5 million. They could bring Auburn back to prominence right now. It's not Lane Kiffin's making $7.5 million at Ole Miss, and I heard his name. It'd take $10 million to move him out of Oxford right now, and I don't blame him because he's got it going on the way he wants it. So I just say Auburn's got a lot of decisions to make. The recruiting's going downhill. They would have like 8 commitments for early signing period, which most schools got 13 to 14 commitments. They had recruited very well. So I say all that too. But that goes with the attitude that's around that athletic department right now. Some of that's instigated internally, and I know that, and the fans pick up on it. Some really hate that he's going this route. I don't think they've looked into the program deep enough to find out. If you watch the game and watch the preparation, I even asked some friends of mine the other day, what do they do at practice every day? Because some of the mistakes they make are just so fundamental. You don't make mistakes like that if you have a 2-hour practice every day and rehearse those kind of things. But so bottom line is they're going to make a change. Win, I think it'll be right after the right after the Iron Bowl. And they'll have somebody in mind that they want to go after and try to bring in and try to salvage recruiting best they can.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's always going to be interesting. We are over the halfway part of the season. It's going to be a fun ride between here to the SEC championship game and figure out who's going to be in the 14th playoff. And it should be a fun ride. And it's going to be fun having you on here, Coach, every Tuesday, breaking down whatever happened in the SEC and college football and every single week. And I do appreciate you jumping on, and I look forward to doing this again next week.
And I'll do the same thing. Thank you so much, Phillip, for the opportunity.
All right, everybody, and appreciate Coach Howell, and I'm going to be looking forward to these conversations. For you guys listening every Tuesday, we'll be recording those every Monday evening, but Coach will be jumping on here with me and talking every Tuesday. Now, of course, like I said in the open, I didn't do my Monday recap pod. So what we're going to do here, there were a couple games there. Me and Coach didn't talk on. I didn't touch on. There's a couple. The Auburn Ole Miss game got a few other thoughts, and the Mississippi State, Kentucky. So we're going to go through these real quickly. This pod is going to go a little bit longer than what they normally would on a Tuesday. Normally, it would just be me and Coach, but since I didn't do the Monday recap, just kind of give you my thoughts and opinions on what some of the stuff that did happen in the SEC this past weekend. So we'll jump back into Auburn and Ole Miss a little bit there. So when Ole Miss jumped up 21-0 in the first 60 minutes of the game, I was like, okay, halftime. Well, we're going to have a new coach for Auburn here. It didn't happen that way. And it was a very interesting situation. Robbie Ashford made some mistakes, had some turnovers there. And then they put TJ Finley in for the one possession. Then that didn't work out. He fumbled the ball. Then you bring Robbie Ashford back in. The offense played well. Tank Bigsby, there's something about those Ole Miss uniforms that just ticks him off, and he runs angry. And he did for 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. Auburn as a whole had 301 yards, but they just could stop Ole Miss. Going into this game, and when me and Matt made our picks on Friday, I thought Auburn would play really good defensively early, keep the game close, best they could in the second half. It put away. I didn't expect Auburn offense to wake up. It's the best Auburn offense has looked all year. Probably second best was the first half against LSU, but they couldn't get anything in the second half. And this one here, I tell you what really hurt Auburn. A couple things here. The onside kick. So it was 31-24. Ole Miss had kicked a field goal, and then they did the onside kick, and then Judkins went 54 yards. They go up 38-24, and Auburn just couldn't recover from the 14-point deficit. If they get that onside kick, maybe they can go down and score and tie the game up at 31 all. They just couldn't do it, and then Ole Miss had 3 players rush for over 100 yards. I think it was the first time since 1976 they had 3 players do that. Judkins had 139, 2 touchdowns. Zach Evans, the TCU transfer, 136, 1 touchdown. And then Jackson Dart went 115 yards rushing in the game. And next up, Auburn is off this week. And as of this recording, Brian Harsin is still the head coach of the Auburn Tigers, and Ole Miss will be playing LSU this Saturday. And on Wednesday's podcast, I'll be joined by Jared Redding from Inside the Rebels, part of 247 Sports. He will be on. We'll talk about more on this game, and we will get his opinions on the upcoming matchup with LSU. I'm not going to stay long on this one. Georgia took care of business against Vanderbilt 55-0, and they do remain number 1 team in the country to go to 7-0. Big gamer Stetson Bennett, 289, 2 touchdowns. He was 18 of 20 in the first half for 211. And that one at 24 straight loss for SEC loss for Vanderbilt. Their last win was October 19th, 2019 against Missouri, where they won 21-14. Backup for Georgia, Carson Beck did get in the game, 8 of 11 for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. Vandy was 3 and out, 6 of 11 drives. And also they only crossed midfield twice in the game. And in those possessions, they had a fumble and a missed field goal. Only 150 total yards. Now, I have said Vanderbilt has improved under Clark Lee, but at the same time, they started 3-1 and they've been blown out 3 games in a row. So while they have improved, they still have a long way to go. They're still the worst team in the Southeastern Conference. For Georgia, look, you can't rotate too much with. They're going to the off week. Good to have a good feeling. They looked more clean than they have in the last couple of weeks. Missouri game. Auburn game at times too, the Kent State game before the Missouri game. So good for Georgia going off week. Of course, next up they will have a game against the Florida Gators on the 29th. Like I said, they're off. Both teams will be off this week. And then Vanderbilt does play Missouri on Saturday. Arkansas stepped out of SEC play. They traveled to play BYU, and the Arkansas offense looked really well, but they had their quarterback back. KJ Jefferson made all the difference here, 29 of 40. For 367, 5 touchdowns, and 32 yards rushing in a 52-35 victory over BYU. This puts both teams at 4-3 on the year. Arkansas is really good on the ground too. Just awesome offense performance by Arkansas. For Rocket Sanders had 175 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Really impressed by Toddy and Trey Knox. 4 receptions, 66 yards, and 1 touchdown. In the game, 6 players with 2 or more receptions, so they were spreading the ball around in the passing game for Arkansas. But you also got to look at the negative on this win for Arkansas. Once again, another game where they give up a lot of passing yards. BYU quarterback Jaron Hall was 26 of 41 for 356 and 3 touchdowns. 2 BYU receivers did go over 100 yards, and they did not get any sacks in the quarterback, which that was something Arkansas has been leading the conference in this year. So still struggling in pass defense, which does not bode well for them moving forward. LSU defeated Florida 45-35. They actually had a 42-21 lead going into the fourth quarter. Jaden Daniels was awesome this game. 6 total touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 3 through the air. This is the 4th straight win for LSU over Florida. They've won 10 of 13. Back to Daniels. He was 23 of 32 overall. 349 yards to the air. He said 300 last week against Tennessee. Like I said, 3 touchdowns there, 44 yards rushing, and the 3 on the ground. Kayshon Boutte, he made an appearance. He is still playing college football. He has 6 receptions for 115 yards, his best performance of the season. Emory Richardson, he had a big 51-yard touchdown pass to start the thing off. He put Florida up 7-0, hitting Justin Shorter. And he also had a 31-yard touchdown run in the third quarter. But like I said, going into the third quarter, Florida was down 42-21. They did get within 7. They just couldn't get the proper stops to get the ball back so they could potentially tie the game. And LSU was able to kick a field goal to go up 45-35 for the win. Like I said earlier, Florida will be off this week, and LSU will be playing Ole Miss on Saturday. That's the CBS game at 2:30 on Saturday as well. Then you had, of course, me and Coach just talked about this, Mississippi State and Kentucky, number 22 Kentucky winning 27-17. Big game for Christian Rodriguez in this one. Best game since his return. This is his third game back. He went for 196 at 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns in this one. He is the 4th Kentucky player to break 3,000 yards in a career. His second touchdown came after Emmanuel Forbes' interception for a touchdown. That made it 20-17 Kentucky, so Mississippi State was still in it. It was basically a little screen pass that Will Levis threw, but Forbes read it great. I mean, he jumped the route, and he was there, and then once he caught it, he was gone. No one was going to catch him. And that was with about 5:30 left there. But then they get the touchdown by Chris Rodriguez, and they go up 27-17. Will Levis back from injury. Actually, he got hurt at one point in this one. His non-throwing arm, it seemed. But he came back. He played well. He was 17-23 for 230, 1 touchdown. He did throw it, like I said, that 1 interception. He connected with Sean Lewis for a 3-yard touchdown to go up 13-10 with 14 left in the third quarter. And Kentucky never looked back. They never gave up the lead again in the game. And you can just tell the difference with him in there and him not there for Kentucky. Because when he's not there, when he didn't play week 4, he can just key on the running game with Christopher Rodriguez and Kavassia Smoke. And with Levis there, now you have to fear the passing game. And that's what he brings with Kentucky. So, like I said, big win for them. Get back on the winning side. In the coming weeks, they will be playing Tennessee. So that's going to be an interesting game to see when they get together in a couple of weeks. Which Tennessee plays UT Martin this upcoming week. And I believe Kentucky is off. If I'm wrong, the internet connect me. But I do believe Kentucky is off this week. The Kentucky defense played well against Will Rogers, as we talked about with Coach. Will Rogers coming off where he was SEC Offensive Player of the Week. He was 25-37, 203, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. They did a really good job, like Coach said, of getting pressure on Will Rogers. And I think he got impatient. He did throw the 1 interception late. I think he got impatient because the whole game he was just taking what Kentucky's giving him. A little small, they can dunk, small routes, nothing really big down the field. But it did seem he kind of got impatient. Mississippi State was on a 3-game winning streak coming into this one after losing to LSU, I think that was 31-16. And they were averaging over 40 points a game there. Mississippi State, yes, Kentucky is off. I got it here. If I look at my notes, I will be able to be right on something and be sure on something. Mississippi State will be at Alabama, which I'm sure will be a very angry Alabama team. And now looking at the newest polls, AP and Coach Paul. And I'm going to be honest, when the playoff rankings start coming out, we won't be doing this segment no more probably. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We'll see. We'll see if what I decide. But an AP poll, Georgia stays at number 1. They're going 7-0. They have 31 votes there. Tennessee jumps up from 6 to 3. They have 15 first place votes in there. Alabama drops from 3 to 6. So basically Tennessee and Alabama swap places. Ole Miss goes from 9 to number 7. They are 7-0. Kentucky jumps from 22 to 19, and Mississippi State drops from 16 to 24. In AP poll, also receiving votes was LSU, South Carolina, and Arkansas had a vote. In the coaches poll, Georgia remains they go to number 1. They jump up 1 spot. They were number 2 last week. Tennessee goes to number 4 in the coaches poll. They were at number 8 in that ranking last week. Alabama goes all the way down to number 6. They were number 1. Ole Miss jumps up 2 spots. They go from 7, coming from number 9. Kentucky went from 22 to 18, and then Mississippi State drops 7 spots. They go to 24. They were number 17, and kind of the same with the AP poll. LSU, South Carolina, and Arkansas receive votes in the coaches poll. Now, the college basketball, yes, we will be talking college hoops on the podcast. I'm going to try to get somebody on probably for next Thursday, next week, to preview upcoming SEC basketball season. But looking at the college basketball, overall number 1 team is North Carolina. Number 2 is Gonzaga. 3 is Houston. Now we get to the SEC teams. Number 4, Kentucky. Number 10, Arkansas. Number 11, Tennessee. Auburn is at 15, and Alabama's at 20. And then they did release on Monday the October 29th TV schedule. Of course, we already knew coming into the year Florida and Georgia would play at 2:30 on CBS. The 11 o'clock game on SEC Network will be Arkansas at Auburn. At 3 o'clock on SEC Network, you'll have Missouri at South Carolina. At 6 o'clock, the biggest game that day. I mean, I know Florida and Georgia's the CBS game, but this is the best game in SEC on the 29th. That is Kentucky at Tennessee, 6 o'clock on ESPN. And then the SEC Network game on Saturday night will be Ole Miss at A&M. That will be a 6:30 kickoff. And everybody, that is going to do it for this edition of Talking SEC. Once again, thanks to Coach Max Howell for jumping on. And like I said, we'll be doing that every single Tuesday here on the podcast. On Wednesday, like I said, I'll be joined by Jared Redding from Inside the Rebels, part of 247 Sports. We will be looking back at the Auburn Ole Miss game, and we'll be previewing the LSU matchup for this upcoming weekend. Thursday, I will be doing a mailbag edition of the show. Your questions, so please come in, give me some questions and all that good stuff. And also, Friday, Matt Lowe will be previewing this weekend's matchups. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, just wherever you get your podcast. You can check out Talking SEC there. And please, if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also check the show out 2 YouTube locations, my personal one, Phillip Jordan YouTube channel, or the Talking SEC YouTube channel. And please subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on a video. I'll read that on a future edition of the show as well. You can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. And you've been listening to Talking SEC.
Thank you for listening to Talkin' SEC. Follow Phillip on social media at PJordanSEC and the show at Talkin' SEC Pod. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time when we're talking SEC.